Okay, Ian, so you've been telling me that you've actually had quite a rough week this week. Can you tell me a bit more about what's been going on for you?
Things were bad, as you know, last time I saw you, but I had a meeting with my boss this week, and it was about my work performance. And I think that my depression's been getting in the way of working properly at work as well. I haven't been able to concentrate and so on. So he didn't really think that I'd been performing too well. So my review was quite bad in a number of areas. And I don't know, I just feel as though it's just another thing that I don't really need to deal with at the moment, on top of everything else.
Okay. So it's leaving you feeling quite overwhelmed?
Yeah, overwhelmed, and just don't know if I can handle it anymore.
Okay. When you say that you don't feel that you can handle it, what kind of goes through your mind thinking about that?
It's just one thing on top of another, on top of another. And no matter what I do, I just, I can't seem to see how things are ever going to get any better.
So it's very, very hard with all of this happening, with your financial problems, with having having difficulty at work because you're feeling so depressed with your concentration, to ever even think that things might get better. Okay. Does that kind of make you feel that it's kind of not worth it at the moment?
Yeah, I don't think that anything I can do is going to help me get out of this rut.
So feeling quite helpless? Okay. Does that make you think at all about wanting to end your life? It does. How often is that coming up for you?
It's a lot since the review, in the last few days.
Last few days. Okay, so you having those kind of thoughts going through your mind? Do you have any time when they're not going through your mind?
Not much.
Not much. Okay. So tell me a bit more about what actually goes through your mind when you think about this.
I think it'd just be a lot easier just to bow out.
So that seems like kind of an option that would work. Okay. Have you thought about how you might do it if you were to bow out? Okay.
Sorry, it's a little bit hard to talk about.
Take your time.
Probably, with the medication that my GP's put me on. I don't know much about it, but I'd imagine if I took enough, it'd be enough.
Okay. So when you think about it, you think, well, if I took all the medication that I have, then maybe that would be enough to end my life?
I think so.
Okay. And, you're obviously here today, so what has stopped you so far from actually acting on those thoughts?
Not much. I don't know, I don't like the idea of my daughter thinking that I didn't have the guts to stick with my life.
Okay. So that's something that kind of stops you when you think about her?
A bit, yeah.
A bit. Any other things?
I'm from a fairly religious background, I suppose, and
Does that feel for you that kind of are stopping you from so far from having kind of done it? Okay. And are you aware, Ian, of kind of what you're hoping will happen Because sometimes I know when we're feeling this desperate and we're feeling very, very overwhelmed, we can get a sense of we just want things to stop versus maybe wanting to kind of to die. So I'm just trying to understand what it feels like for you.
I just wanted to stop.
You wanted to stop, okay. So it seems that saying taking all the pills that you have would be one way of having a solution to your problems.
Yeah.
Okay. But when you think about that, what stops you from actually doing anything is the feeling of, you know, what your daughter would feel like if you did it, and also that it kind of goes against your beliefs. Okay. But it must seem quite overwhelming to have those thoughts then.
Yeah. It just seems like the only way.
The only way. Okay. So has it been quite hard for you in the last while as well, in the last week since you had the performance review, to focus on the things that we've been talking about in terms of the things, looking at strategies that may help you to start to feel better?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I haven't really given that much thought.
Okay. So that's been really, really hard to hold on to. Okay. So I just want to kind of check, have you still been going to work since the performance review? What have you been doing?
Spending a lot of time in bed.
Right.
Just sitting around the house. Looking at photographs.
This is of your
My wife.
girlfriend. Yeah. And the more you do that, does it make you feel worse? Okay. So it would seem that we're in a kind of a dilemma here. There's on one hand you have this one option that would seem to solve all your problems, in that it would stop, it would make everything stop. But on the other hand, there's a part of you that doesn't want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. How strong do you think that part of you is at the moment?
Not very.
Not very?
No. No.
Okay. Say in a percentage-wise, which part feels stronger? The one that says, okay, well, let's just go home and take all the pills?
It's much stronger.
That's much stronger? Okay. Have you been collecting the pills for that?
Only the ones that I've...
Only the ones that you've got?
doctor's given me.
So those are the antidepressants that
and
you've
the
got?
sleeping tablets. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I'm wondering what, because this is quite concerning in a way, and I'm quite worried about you in terms of going home and feeling like this and having to deal with the struggle. Do you have any ideas of what you think might be helpful for support for you at this point in time? It's hard to even think about anything else rather than this point. Okay. Do you have, because I'm wondering how helpful it is for you to sit at home, kind of looking at photographs, kind of thinking constantly about your wife and that she's not there, and those kind of things, how almost that makes you feel worse. So I'm wondering, maybe during the time while you're feeling like this, whether we can think of anything that may help you to kind of feel more supported, to feel less alone.
I could give John a ring, I suppose. He's my brother.
Right.
Go and visit him and his family.
Do you feel that you'd be able to do that?
I don't want to kind of burden him with all of this, though, and just because my relationship's in the toilet doesn't mean he has to kind of suffer all of my misery as well.
Okay. So you worry about being a burden to him or putting your problems on him. Okay. Would he see it that way?
Probably not.
Probably not. Because you've described him as being quite supportive and
That's great.
and that you normally have quite a good relationship.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you feel that you could contact him, say, after the session, or would you prefer to do it maybe together?
I can give him a call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can do it after the session when I get home.
When you get home. Okay. As as you were saying a bit earlier, sitting at home and looking at photographs, and I'm assuming probably your sleep is still quite affected as well from what you were telling me in the last session, and how are you eating at the moment?
Not much over the last couple of days. I haven't really felt...
You haven't felt like eating at all. So it's really been hard to kind of look at anything else than I just wanted to stop, and this is my kind of way out of stopping. But it kind of goes against kind of our religious beliefs and feeling that this wouldn't be very good for your daughter as well. Okay. So maybe there's a time where you could be with someone, with your brother, and just to help you through this really kind of tough time until we can start to work on looking at other things that might be more helpful for you. How does that sound to you?
It's something, I suppose.
Yeah? Okay. Would it be helpful for me to maybe give you a call later on to see whether you have kind of contacted your brother and managed to talk to him? And
I can call him. I think I can do that.
You sound like you feel quite confident that you'll do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. All right. As we can see from that scenario, Ian was quite depressed and feeling quite helpless and hopeless, and was admitting to having constant suicidal ideation, or thinking about that he wanted his problems to stop, although he wasn't saying that he was actually wanting to die. Now, what would be important is to take enough time to actually do a thorough risk assessment, and it was clear that I hadn't been able to get all the information that I would like to in the brief 10 minutes that you saw. Some of the things that will be important to get from Ian would be whether he would actually make an attempt, in that how likely did he feel that he would actually act on his thoughts. So asking things like, how likely do you feel that you would act on the thoughts that you're having? So if you were to go home now, how likely do you feel that you might actually take the antidepressants, and how many do you think you would take? The other thing to ask him would be whether he'd actually done a trial run, whether he'd taken any extra antidepressants and how that had gone. And hopefully this is something that I would have done in an assessment interview with him, was to find out whether he'd had any previous attempts of suicide and what those attempts entailed. Now, Ian had said that he would phone his brother. However, it was unclear as to when he might do that, or how safe he was at that point in time. So the other thing I'd want to find out is the imminence of the risk, so how likely he felt he was going to act on these thoughts, in addition to then maybe making sure that he actually phoned his brother whilst I was in the room with him. Because sometimes clients will say yes, they'll do this, but they may then leave the room and actually not do this. So the really important thing to think about is, how safe is this client to leave your office on their own? He mentioned a couple of protective factors, in that he didn't want to hurt himself because of his children or his family, and these are always important things to find out, and his support structure in who was around that could help him over the time where he was feeling at his most vulnerable. The other thing that you may have noticed when you watched the video was that I tried to engage him in trying to think of solutions and to get involved with what might help him to feel better and what might help him at that point in time. Because often clients who are feeling suicidal or are feeling that there's no hope kind of lose their ability to feel that they can make decisions or actually take action within their lives. So trying to engender that is a really helpful thing to do, and engenders hope. The other thing to think about when you're doing risk assessment is that it usually takes longer, and you could see with Ian is he was quite depressed and it took him quite a while to open up and to talk about what was going on for him. So if you're having another client booked in right after, you've got to think about that this is going to upset your timetable. You can't just say, well, it's the hour has ended and okay, off you go. Because again, you've got to ask yourself, is this client safe to leave? So it just takes as long as it needs to take for you to get all the information that you need. Thinking about the means is another thing that's important. He mentioned that he was taking antidepressants, and having knowledge about how lethal the means are that a client is thinking about is important. So for instance, if they're saying they're going to shoot themselves, finding out whether they actually have access to a gun, or whether they know how a gun works, or whether they have access to bullets, are things that are important to ask. So knowing the lethality of the means is another important thing to think about and to find out. So there's quite a number of things that you need to find out when you're doing a risk assessment. It's the intent, how serious are they, and how soon do they think they might act on these thoughts that they're having, the means that they're going to use, how they're going to do it, and how lethal the means are, whether they've had any previous attempts, what support structures they've got, and whether there are any protective factors that might prevent them from actually acting on their thoughts.